So now moving on to the next session. So our next session has two speakers, Mr. Vijayanand Choudhury, Global Head Supply Chain Management, Sterlite Technologies Limited, and Mr. Kabeer Arora, Initiative Lead, Open Contracting India, Civic Data Lab. Introducing Mr. Vijayanand Choudhury. Mr. Choudhury is a supply chain management executive with 21 years of experience across various industries such as IT and ITES, retail, technology, and manufacturing. He has substantial expertise in consulting, category management, logistics, go to market strategies, procurement outsourcing, and the implementation of S2P solutions. Throughout his career, he has held leadership positions in companies like STL, Tata Technologies, Wipro, EXL, and IBM. Introducing Mr. Arora. Mr. Arora leads the Open Contracting India initiative at Civic Data Lab that works towards making public procurement in India more efficient, effective, and participatory. Mr. Arora has been working towards strengthening government capacities to make data informed decisions and enhance citizen partnership. Today, Mr. Chaudhary and Mr. Arora will be talking about advancing procurement data maturity, which will cover data analytics and management. Thank you. Over to you, sir. Over to you, Mr. Chaudhary. So looks like the speakers. So the speakers are joining in 5 minutes. Meanwhile, the audience could, visit one of the virtual platforms or maybe take a selfie of this. There has been a glitch, and the speakers will both will join in 5 minutes. Yeah, Mr. Arora is here. I think Mr. Chaudhary will be joining in.
Uh, Good afternoon. Can you just quickly let me know if I would be going first or Mr. Chaudhary would be like rough timing for the presentation?
Yeah, I'll just ask the organizers to get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Arora, you could go first, and Mr. Chaudhary would join you later. Would that be all right with you?
Sure. I'll just upload my slide deck.
Sure. So you could start whenever you're ready, Mr. Arora.
All right, just give me a second. My
Go ahead.
presentation is uploading here. Is my audio clear?
Yeah, it is clear. Thank you.
All all right. So let me know whenever you want me to start. I'll be
You can start now. You could start now. Yeah,
sure.
yeah, thank you.
Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to get a sense if I'm audible and the slide deck is visible. Can that be confirmed by someone? All right, so I'll start. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Kabeer from Civic Data Lab. We are a private entity company which works with data for public good. We work to make different kinds of public data more accessible, demonstrate how it could be utilized for different kind of decision-making processes, improvement of efficiency, citizen participations and collaborations, and work towards institutionalizing more data-driven decision-making. One of the initiatives that we've been working with is Open Contracting India. And this particular initiative talks about use of contracts data. So today I will be speaking about advancing data maturity in public sector procurement processes. So to begin with, um, the first I'd like to just demonstrate two different screen grabs of tenders from one of the states in India. Uh, I'm not sure if I can see audience comments. If yes, maybe someone can comment about the major difference that they can see in the two screenshot. Uh, just trying to access Q&A section. Just give me a second, please. All right, I'll progress. So these are the two screenshots of different public sector tenders. And in case you can't notice, there is one fundamental difference between them. When we look closely, the title and the description. So for one, the title is AS underscore 18 underscore 11, whereas in the title for other is solar powered MTTWS at particular area under particular division in under NABARD for the specific year. Uh, Similarly, for work description, one says nothing, whereas in other says construction of approach road, boring, installation of tube well, installation of commissioning of solar PV modules, their mounting structures, construction of control rooms, underground PVC distribution systems, and more. So this is basically what data is, procurement data, right? So procurement data is supposed to be able to tell you in detail different aspects of particular tender. So why is it important to know all this information? Becomes another question. So first is, uh, and that is just the sheer scale in public sector enterprises. So what happens is we can actually all the information that is over here in title and work description, I'm certain can be accessed if we go and download the documents. All the information will be present over there. But when the scale of work and the tenders is extremely high, then it becomes very difficult for us to individually go through PDFs, identify the details, and then understand the nuances of different departments, sectors, performance of procurement patterns in general. Just to give a sense, this is the information just for central public procurement. States are different from this. So just as per CPPP in India, there have been more than 15 lakh or 155,000, 300, sorry, 15 lakh 53,423 tenders since 2000, in roughly almost a decade. And for the almost the amount of 15 lakh tender, number of bids which have been received is around 52 lakhs. So this tells the sheer numbers and scale that we work with in public sector units. And as such, not having data captured properly, it becomes very difficult to do categorical analysis. Uh, and just to give a bit more context in India, what happens is in India, open data policy does not cover really government procurement as a data set. Um, as such, even after the data is captured in certain manner, it is not always very accessible for analysis. Um, for example, if we go to our e-procurement portals, you can actually look up certain things by tender IDs. Then you have to enter a captcha to be able to download, to be able to access page with all the information. And even with that, you can at max get it as a PDF. We can't really then compare, say, how many tenders my department has put out in past one financial year and how the performance has been, right? So it is not most machine readable data. And what happens with such kind of opaqueness, which is not always intended, but as a byproduct, it not only can lead to more corruption, but also increases like inefficiencies within public sectors. So in public sector, procurement is not just about acquiring certain goods, services, and product, but it is also delivery of state's commitment to its citizen. So it becomes very important for us to look at efficiency from a very nuanced angle from social delivery perspective as well, which is not possible. This kind of things are not possible if the data is not accessible. And to solve this issue, a lot of countries in the world, it is not just India, a lot of countries in the world have come up with a global uh, open contracting standards. It's called Open Contracting Data Standards, and it provides a framework to be able to capture data in the through the procurement life cycle completely, from the planning stage to the tendering stage to the award of contract stage to the then to contract, and after that implementation, right? Whether the work, how the work has been completed, were there amendments, and so on and so forth. So Open Contracting Data Standard, it's one of the global data standards which have been adopted across the world and allows data to be captured in a way which can be analyzed, and also provides support system and toolkits to be able to follow certain key performing indicators. Uh, so coming to the case of India specifically, in India also we have moved towards e-procurement since actually quite a long time now. And because we move towards e-procurement, by default, we are capturing uh, a lot of different kinds of data. This uh, in India, this is called JEPNIC, which is Government E-Procurement Portal by NIC, that is National Informatics Center. So JEPNIC portals provide a way to the tendering authorities to be able to put out the information in a certain manner. So we are by default capturing informations over here, a lot of under different sections, the dates, the documents, the addendums, the details of tenders. So just to give a bit more of example, so we are capturing different kinds of data formats, right? So if it's a multi number of covers, multi-currency BOQ allowed or not, tender type, so we are capturing a lot of information. Uh, but what happens is, even despite of capturing a lot of information, the fields are present over there. We are generating a lot of metadata, but the way we are filling the data is not always standardized across, say, union government versus also state or different state governments. So what happens is, why it becomes very important is, just giving an example and going back to the first screen grab that I shared. A well-written tender title in itself is able to give a lot of details. For example, this is a recommendation we came up with during one of our capacity building sessions with one of the state governments, and we have created a guidebook called Breaking the Silo, which does share about how data can enable cross collaboration and efficiency gain. So, just to give an example, uh, taking an example of work, say name of work under name of the particular scheme at name of the place during name of the financial year can allow us to capture a lot of information just looking at the title itself. So when we are looking, and if there's a sequence is also standardized, there's a way to people working with data to be able to break these informations, right? Uh, this is where, yeah, this is the same thing that we were talking about. So we've been trying to bring around these changes, and also actually the organization. And I was speaking to Mr. Kishan Batra. He has also worked on great taxonomy standardizing projects for public procurement in India. So there are different kind of standards which can be followed, but all standards, any kind of standardization, must account into later retrospective data analysis. So uh, in India, we have been working particularly with the state of Assam. So Assam actually did map all its data to open contracting data standards and share the data on the data.gov.in website, which is accessible for anyone currently. Then, uh, followed by this, what we can also uh, we also work to launch something called Assam Public Procurement Explorer. So this particular platform allows all the public procurement data in a accessible manner. So unlike e-procurement websites, which are mostly to keep bidders into loop about what procurements are live, what is happening, this is more about data present for analysis. In this, you can literally just search a particular name, for example, electricity, and it will uh, give you option for bulk downloading uh, all the tenders related to electricity. So this was launched last year, uh, and then this was linked by Assam's state public procurement portal in their official website. So what happens? Why this is important is because it is impossible for any one particular stakeholder category or one particular department to have all kind of different capacities. No matter how much we try to build capacity within our own department, what how we can move forward to leverage the advancements of data science as we are progressing in the field is to open up collaborations. So once the data is out there, a lot of data scientists, experimentation, different organizations can actually use the data for different case studies and present innovative ways and solutions to be able to improve our procurement processes. And I'll be sharing some of the case studies as we move forward. So, and just to give an example, once the data is out there, we could very easily analyze the tenders and find the patterns of in past 5 years, and also associate when the government actually keeps pushing different reforms. It's very important to track the differences which are coming through. So just to give a sense, if you go to this particular website, which is open access a website, we also have certain KPIs, key performing indicators, which can be noticed over here by default, even without downloading the data and running the script yourself. So we can say how over past 5 years, award of contract data publication is constantly increasing by the state of Assam by all their efforts, right? Similarly, what we are seeing is the value for money is increasing. So value for money, how we were measuring is basically uh, amount as per the tender document versus award of contract amount. If there's increase from the actual amount, then of course there is a overrun, whereas in the amount awarded is less than the initially mentioned amount, that was cost saving. So we can see these patterns also coming out more clearly. We can measure competitions, that how the number of bids are increasing. We need to monitor how many tenders get cancelled or retendered because we were not able to get, say, more than one bid. So these all things are extremely important to be able to monitor, which can be only be monitored once the data is out there in a standardized format. Um, so again, this is just to summarize what I was saying, that we need to monitor procurement health. We also need better way to plan procurement, and because once until we know the patterns, we don't know how to plan ahead. uh, Similarly, ultimately, until data is out there, we cannot ever utilize the advancement in the field of data science, leverage the technological reforms which are happening. That can only happening by encouraging collaboration with different experts, which can happen if data is out there in a format which is accessible. So now I'll just quickly move towards particular case studies on how data can be used to harness not just better efficiency, optimizing the processes, getting better bidder responses, getting less number of tenders retendered, understanding the pattern change, but also because specifically I'm speaking about public sector enterprise, tender is also a government very important tool to distribute public commitments. So these study tells a very in a larger sense how to leverage procurement as a tool for service deliveries. So this is one of the studies we did for the state of Assam. We looked at basically the state of maternal and child health across different districts in Assam. Looking at infant mortality rate. So when you see the more red the district color is, that signifies more criticality in terms of maternal and child health. And above it, we can see dots, the circle of different shades of green, which signifies the tenders which were related to maternal and child health. So we were able to see where the need for maternal and child health is higher versus where the more amount of money and tenders and projects are going to address the concern of maternal and child health. So we could identify the gap and see, oh, this is the gap we need to clear up, right? This particular area is relatively getting more attention where this district is already doing somewhat okay. Whereas in, say, district in the southern part of the state is more critical, but we are not getting enough tenders or projects over there. So this allows us to look at tender as a very different kind of tool, which is needed to be looked at in public sector enterprises specifically. Another case study that I would like to bring over here is using data science models basically. So again, taking the case of Assam, uh, the state is prone to flooding. It's a very common understanding for people in India. Annually, the state faces a lot of flooding. Just last year alone, we had over 190 fatalities because of floods. Look, because of state-wise severity of floods, there are a lot of tenders each year which are published to manage the floods better. So it could be for repair and retrofitting, it could be for preventative measures, it could be for immediate response. But there are a lot of tenders which go out to address the issue of floods. But what happens is there's no mechanism to be able to understand if these tenders are in fact building long-term resilience. So this is a data model that we built where we pulled together procurement data along with satellite and weather data to understand the severity of flood hazard, with losses and damages data to understand the intensity of damages, the impact of floods in different areas, to understand the already existing infrastructure in different areas, tells how much is the coping capacity of those districts. And finally, the demographic information tells us vulnerability of different population groups. To very simply put, uh, all these factors, the first four factors, tell us the need of intervention in different parts of the state because of their issues of flooding. And the fifth part tells us how we have been responding by procurement as a tool. So what we did was from the 5 years of tenders data, which was around 40,000 tenders in number, we were able to comb through tenders which were just related to flood, which came around 5,000 in numbers. Then we were able to geocode them, identify the category, whether they were pre-disaster, post-disaster, whether they were repair and response, or whether they were for preparedness and mitigation. So we were able to see where the requirement is versus where the procurement is going. But we did not want it to be one-time exercise as a static report. We had to make it more dynamic because all these information is dynamic, right? Losses and damages happen year after year. Procurement is a very dynamic data. Similarly, uh, weather keeps changing frequently. So the data model allowed us to make this more dynamic where we can by press a button, run the script and understand where the need is higher within the state of intervention. So once I see where the need of intervention is higher, then I can go through my procurement and look at the category that what kind of expenditure I have been doing anyway year after year, and if it is helping towards better flood management. This is the kind of report that we get from it. This is one of the districts which showed very high impact, which showed that the need of attention is higher. However, we see what over here is that losses and damages are higher, but at the same time, the amount spent year after year on procurement is also very high. What it tells us that we are spending a lot of money, a lot of new projects are being tendered, but the kind of projects which are coming up are not helping build long-term resilience. That means that most of the procurement are mostly going for repair and retrofitting, instead of mitigation measures. So it allows us to combat the floods in better manner. Very quickly, the last argument for and a use case why procurement data becomes very important is globally we are facing a threat of climate change. We are trying to be more aware about our actions, and government is among the highest, biggest purchaser of goods, works, and services. Right. So the environmental footprint of government is extremely high. So it lies upon the public sectors to be able to demonstrate how to make more environmentally sensitive purchases. So for this again, until we have right data, we capture right data, we cannot make greener procurement a viable solution. So for green procurement also, which is something I think we are also touching in another session in the same conference, what data becomes extremely crucial to identify what are the high impacting sectors, high impact procurement that we are doing, how we can tag it to the impacts, how we can tag it to the rating of the degree of environmental sensitivity, what are the impacts we can move, and gradually start calculating life cycle cost over cost of acquisition. So all these things to even implement green public procurement is possible only if we start capturing data in a proper manner and make it available to people also to access it, collaborate on it, come up with very interesting use cases, studies, and help public sector by collaborating on how things can be improved. So this, I'll just end my presentation over here by saying the way forward becomes first thing for better media practices is to start building our own capacities, to be open towards collaboration because none of the stakeholders has it all. So some of the stakeholders will come up with expertise in data capacities. Some of the stakeholders, for example, in public sectors, have expertise in actually doing procurement processes, right? So maybe collaborations are needed to build the data capacity so that we can start capturing data. Meanwhile, we need to publish standardized data in open so that we can enhance collaboration for meaningful and impactful procurement processes. I'll just stop over here and check with the organizers if there are any questions. Thank you.
All right. Am I audible? All right. Thanks, everyone. You know, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you are in. And firstly, I would just thank ISM and World Bank to go ahead and give me an opportunity to go ahead and present on this topic of procurement maturity, which contains that how data should be managed so that we go ahead and develop our next generation procurement strategies. So, given that, the basic mantra would be that, our next generation automation depends on today's data that we have. While it would be easy to tell that, garbage in, garbage out, but that's the truth that if we do not have the data in a proper format, in a proper organized way, obviously most of the next gen tools will not work. Having said that, let's get started. So, what is that we all want to do? That where do we all really want to head in terms of our procurement strategy? When we say that the supplier management will be very proactive, where our strategies are very preemptive. Similarly, all our processes and all the activities, operational activities that we do, that are fully automated, and source to contract is very much predictive, that our supply base, our spend management, the prices, our other things are very much uh, or, which are very much predictive in nature, which are suggesting us what we should be doing, which are finding suppliers on its own. So that's the future state that we all want to be, right? We all want to be there, and these are the three things that really we want to be in. Having said that, what we are going to discuss today is typically data in procurement, taxonomy and MDM, some data maturity, and predictive data analytics. Now, if we see, where does our data really reside, I would consider procurement as part of a large supply chain activity. Actually, it is supply chain management or supply management that we call about. Procurement stands somewhere in between of this whole large particular process. But having said that, procurement, we generally look at it in two different formats. One is a very strategic activities, the other is operational activities. In strategic activities, what we first do is define a sourcing strategy, and then we go and do a lot of demand management, then contract management, then award of the contracts. Then we see, after we do all of these, then comes how do we measure the quality of the suppliers, and go and do some analytics over the spend that we have done, so that we are in control of our spend management, bring out savings for our organizations, and at the same time see that how we go ahead and transform as per the organization's goals. So these are key strategic activities we keep doing. Now, as against to the operational activity is that we create a PR, we create a approval process, then we go ahead and do the purchasing or the PO activity. We punch out that particular PO, we manage the logistics of it, and once we have done the received the material, how do we manage the invoices and the payment. So those are the various other operational activities. Now, if you look at data, we are having data in all these segments, all the areas of work that I just now told. And they are all in different formats, in different ways, and they all are interlinked. And if you see one particular ERP system, whether it is SAP, Oracle, or anything else, all there are behind them, there are a lot of tables which are interlinked, and how these data talk to each other, and they work for us. So when we are doing all of this, in reality, are we doing all of this only within our organization, within the world that we live in? I would say it is much more beyond it. And when I say it's much more beyond it, who does this all data interact with? Starting from our suppliers to our customers. Now, when we are doing things onto our input side or the upstream side, we go ahead and see suppliers. That means their supplier's supplier is also seeing this kind of data, and they are working with some of it. There are prospective suppliers when we talk about our sourcing strategies who are looking at it. There are a lot of government bodies that are involved, like, for example, uh, a clearance, a taxation authority, a government uh, interaction in terms of banking, in terms of financial institutions, contract management. There are different legal councils looking at this particular data. There are good amount of cross-border entities, and and also there's good amount of social media and online entities that are also looking at this particular data. So on the left hand side, this is whole suppliers world, which is looking at our data in a certain format, in a certain way. Having said that, what are the things that they are interpreting? That is more key. At the same time, when we move downstream, it is our customers, like the way I am a customer to my supplier. Similarly, I am supplier to my customer, and my customer is also seeing all similar data in a certain fashion. Now, whether I receive a good, whether I receive an invoice or a QR code or any other document which is related to what I have produced as a product or a service, everything has a certain format of data. So that means our customer, their customer, prospective customers, and similarly banking, outbound logistics partners, and their social media is also seeing this particular data. Now, if all these data will work in a silo which cannot be interpreted by all these cross agencies that are involved in this whole supply chain, then it's going to be very difficult. So the data has to be well understood by all of them. And if the data is understood by all of them, what are we really creating? We are absolutely creating one industry. Now imagine if this whole one industry is working seamlessly as one organization with different EDIs or different data interchanges, then the world would be so fantastic. Your smart contracts or any predictive analytics, everything will work very seamlessly. Now, if you have to do this, where do we really start? Now, how do we mature our data in the organization, right? So I said there could be four stages. Now, at a nascent stage, we would simply say that, yeah, I have a ERP or a system or a tool which is really working for me. And in that, I have randomly coded a few things and I've repeated those codes. I've created certain digitized formats to go ahead and work with, whether it is a purchase order request or uh, whether it is a commodity code or a vendor code or a category code or anything of that sort. When that whole particular set of data is there in some format which is helping me to analyze and making me to work. Now, most of the times in the organization today, if I have, uh, let's take an example of Apple phone. Today, the new iPhone 15 is getting launched, and me as an organization, I'm buying Apple phones. Now, the phone has a particular code. Now, the model 14 and model 15 are two different commodities, and they should have two different codes. But point is, if I use the same code to buy a 14 and a 15, then I'm just repeating that particular code. And when I continuously do this, can I do a historic analysis? It would be very difficult, right? So the categorization and other things are missing. And then we also have HSN codes which are corresponding to this, to these material codes, which goes and does the taxation automatically. That is going to get disturbed. So, but in some format, we have certain data and we are also doing some manual overrides. Doing all of this, I would really call it as that an organization would be in a very nascent stage. Now, moving that to an organized stature would mean that I have coded it appropriately. I understand the categories. I put some internal standards of the organization, but not a taxonomy that can be really understood by the outer world, but at least inside within my organization, I'm able to understand. Then I can do some analytics and do some visualization on that, whether I run a visualization tool and go and do a lot of analytics. Now, similar to as my previous speaker explained, there are good amount of visualizations that can be done and where two different subjects can be related and work. So this could be a very intrinsic stature where, within the organization I'm well organized. Now, moving it one step ahead, if I adopt to a taxonomy based standards, which is well accepted across the organization. Now, we all can say that even outside the organization, there are different standards. But if there are different standards, but as long as they are standards, and I write an algorithm where one standard can talk to another standard, at least even that will work, right? And at the same time, most of the international standards, whether it is ANSI or UNSPSC, they are so well drafted and designed that if you can write algorithms, they can start talking to each other. Similarly, my supplier is able to see few things directly. He can preempt that, what kind of order is coming in, and his EDI and the electronic data interchange is connected. Then also we call it as a good adaptive approach. Once we have all of this, then we can do category based analytics, we can do historical analytics, spend analytics, we can go and do trace and track of our material. We can do a lot of things where good amount of automation can be put in and a lot of visualization can be done. When we are doing all of this, this is the time when we can really bring in RPA, where, when we have a certain data in a certain format and we have to go and put it across to a different tool, and the automation can take it forward, then we go and put a RPA at that particular pace. So this is a very adaptive stage where we are in, where we are at the marketplace. Now, having all this particular data, if we are putting AI and ML, where we are putting certain algorithms in place to see and to simulate certain situations, then we are saying that we are putting the AI. And similarly, when we put those algorithms and the computer or the machine is really taking up those algorithms and simulating newer instances and newer outcomes that we are putting in, and that would be a typical machine learning. Well, in this world, everyone believes that, or generally the new mantra is AI and ML, and it sounds uh, very difficult and technical for the procurement and supply chain team. We sometimes tell ourselves that, we are not technical, but trust me, AI and ML are very simplistic things in the world. If we have data, if we are putting certain algorithms, we are doing visualization, and if we are plugging in certain outcome related algorithms using various tools, whether it is a random forest or a really linear progression or a lot of mathematical analysis and data models that we can design, and if we plug those data models onto that visualization layer, then that is where the actual AI comes in. And when we simulate that event by event, the machine itself is going to learn and go ahead and suggest the new models. That's the machine learning. Otherwise, exactly, please don't be perturbed that, AI/ML is something different and a new world. But when we are doing all of this, obviously, we will have to do a data governance. We need to go ahead and ensure that there is no kind of data compromise that is happening in the whole process. Otherwise, all these models will fail or give anomalies in their reports, or will go and lead us to make some wrong decision making. So we need to secure that we are not doing any manual overrides or going and accepting certain non-compliances in terms of our coding or the processes that we have set. As long as we go ahead and secure the data governance, then nothing is going to trouble us. When we do all of this, obviously we live in a predictive state where we are able to preempt a lot of things, whether it is a demand or a supply or a price or a spend analytics or a customer's outbound logistics or track and trace, a lot of things, and all of them will become really predictive. Now, this is a typical journey, is what I would say, right? Where at the nascent stage we are simply just little digitized, then we have organized our internal data, we are now in a collaborative data format, and then we are fully digitalized, not digitized, but totally digitalized. So this is a typical journey. I would sincerely suggest that all of us who are in the private sector or in the government sector or in whichever organization we are in, we need to go ahead and be honest to ourselves that where exactly we are in this whole data maturity journey, and really take this forward from there. Now, let me talk something about taxonomy and MDM, right? Most of us will be using ERP or some kind of tool, right? And in these tools, whatever we do, we need to be very well organized, and we need to follow certain standards. Always we will have a question when we look at it. What kind of standards do I follow for my material codes, or my vendor coding should be in which methodology, or my whether it's a capex or a opex spend, then there would be a certain capex code that has to be applied, whether it is a project code or a WBS code or a business org entity. So all the ERPs will have a certain data structure or chart of accounts or whatever we call it, right? We need to go out and sit peacefully before we implement them. Or if we are working, or if we get introduced to a system which is already live, even then take a step back and peacefully think that if we have to redefine it and redesign it for a adaptive mature model, or to get more adaptive to the marketplace, please go ahead and take two steps behind and cleanly think that what we should be adopting, how we should be doing, simulate those structures, and then when we see that yes, this is working, is when then we go ahead and put it. But generally, uh, typical, try to follow any one particular standard, whether it is a UN, for certain codes which really interact, like material codes interact outside of your organization, and project code and WBS interacts internal of your organization. But both of them have to be very well linked, right? So when we go ahead and do these uh, coding, let us also keep in our mind that who will be looking at these particular codes in certain shape or format. It would be our suppliers, it would be our government bodies, it would be logistics, it would be anyone, or like I showed you in the previous slide. There are a lot of, the whole world is going to watch, or the industry in which we operate is going to watch. Now, when we use certain standard software, they also work on certain standard codes, and typically, generally, most of the softwares have UNSPSC coding system. But having said that, when we will be having this typical challenge that when we work with our suppliers, they will have their own coding system, like a manufacturing part number or whatever. So it cannot be that we go and put their manufacturing part number as my material code. Then then we are messing the standard. So while we follow our standard, we go ahead and write algorithms to go ahead and link it to their part numbers. It is that particular point in time when the systems will really work for us. Generally, this is more relevant for direct procurement, where there is good amount of raw material, a long list of materials and services that we take. Now, when we are doing all of this, we will have a lot of internal standards that we'll have to go and work with these external standards. Like, I would have a certain definition of capex, I would have a certain definition of OPEX, certain definition of REVEX, certain definition of services. For example, for me, green is GRN. For someone else, it is GREEN. For me, uh, a pencil could be a direct commodity. For someone, it could be an indirect commodity. For someone, it is capex. For someone, it could be revex. So whatever our organization considers, you go ahead and put those formats, but go ahead and try to link it to the codes which are going out of your organization. Then this whole thing will work. Now, how do we go ahead and establish that? We will have to create algorithms that would equate the different operating standards within the same ecosystem. The moment we do that, I would say that we have arrived. Having said that, you know, how do we look at it at a 40,000 feet above, that when we do all of this, what is going to happen? At the core, we'll have our supplier networks, their spend analytics, e-sourcing, auctions, contract management, etc. When we go a little mature, we would have things like predictive analytics, smart contracts, and then robotics or RPA or cognitive computing and AI. So that would be a little more matured style. Now, that the most advanced part would be something like we are using IoT, where we are collecting automatic data from the sensors. We are using a blockchain technology, or we are using certain kind of footprint methodology to go and track, or we are using some virtual reality. Or imagine, how the work would be when I walk into my room and say, "Hey Alexa," or any other name, right? Alexa or Siri or whatever. Can you please tell me the status of purchase order ABCD number? And Alexa would respond to me saying that this purchase order in this approval stage, or it has gone out, or of this particular purchase order, some material is delivered, some is not. If they start talking, that is natural language processing, where a command is given and it is converted and the results are coming out. That would be a typical virtual reality, is what I would say. That's These are some of those emerging technologies really we would like to go. But having said that, what is our journey where we want to reach is very simple. Our inputs need to be very much improved. Our data needs to be well governed, where we move from a unstructured database to a structured database, where all our, like my previous speaker showed, that there's a lot of text, and how the text can be used as a data. Similarly, our track and trace, our third party data, like I spoke a lot about it in terms of taxonomy and algorithm that would integrate a certain format to our internal format. When we do all of this, obviously, a lot of things would come out. We can talk about AI and ML and tracking, blockchain and RPA. So obviously the results would be that we have a predictive source to contract and an automated P2P and a proactive supply management. So this is the whole journey. Given the time, obviously, this is a favorite subject, and I can speak more and more about it with a lot of other case studies. But paucity of time, this is what I have for today. Any questions or anything, I would be open to take.
Thank you for your insights, Mr. Chaudhary. Uh, we'll have a Q&A. So Mr. Arora can also join on stage. We have a couple of questions from the audience. I'll read out the questions one by one. So the first question is, do we use data to identify potential risks or opportunities for collaboration with suppliers? So one of you could answer, or yeah.
Yeah, we would. I mean, uh, we cannot tell something is when we have to measure a risk, whether it is a low risk, high risk, or medium risk, or whether it is a risk or not. If you have to do that, then obviously it has to be by data, right? So we are going to use the data, but at the same time, now we are talking about supplier risk. Now, the data between what the supplier has and what we have, if we go ahead and collaborate that with a certain standard, certain format, which is live, then I'm sure it would be a very automated interface, and we can easily go and do the risk. For example, there are many risk management tools of the suppliers, like for these tools count the data from various social media engines, news engines, and other engines, and your internal performance of that particular supplier, and then brings up and tells you whether the supplier is red, green, orange. So, I mean, there are many who do that, Reuters or Dow Jones or Dun and Bradstreet. I mean, that's how they work. But at the end of the day, at the back end, it is all about the data and the kind of algorithms that run over it, and the AI and ML that run over it.
Thank you. So moving on to the next question. What do you mean by green public procurement? How can procurement help in achieving sustainability? Thank you.
Uh, I can take this one, Vijay.
Yeah, 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 go ahead.
Yeah. So green public procurement is basically bringing environmental assessment into the process of acquiring goods, services, and work. So this is a discourse which is catching up globally. So European Union already have framework for it. OECD, World Bank, and all other bigger conglomerates have guidelines for it. It basically looks at cost of goods, works, and services across life cycle and how the impact on environment can be lowered. One good example that I can think of is the cost of acquiring initially a regular vehicle might be a bit higher, but if we are operating vehicle for around 5 years, in that case, EV's operational cost and environmental cost is exponentially low than say a diesel run vehicle. So just changing our procurement criteria to have higher environmental impact can help things green up and achieve sustainability in a broader lens, specifically talking about public sector enterprises as well as larger enterprises, because they are single biggest purchaser often in any geography that you take up. So yes, I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, Mr. Arora. So moving on to the next question. In what ways can AI enhance data collection and management and procurement processes, contributing to improved data maturity levels? Over to you. One of you could take this. Thank you.
All right. Kabir, you would like to address, or should I?
Uh,
Um,
I can go after you. You can take the first stab and then I
all
can
right.
go ahead.
All right. See how artificial intelligence can help in data maturity. My answer would be is that if your data is mature, then you can do artificial intelligence, right? So it is not that AI that would bring the data or cleanse the data. Yeah, maybe when you do data heuristics, like for example, I'm working in an organization. The organization is 30 years old, and it has got a lot of data inside the ERP, and that historic data really matters to me. Yes, then what I would do is then I would go and do a data cleansing methodology on top of it, like Kabir had shown. And when I do the data cleansing over it and do the data heuristics, there I can go and deploy certain AI to do the cleansing. Otherwise, like I said, data has to be matured. Like when I said nascent and improved, and then adaptive, and then we go ahead further. So data, when we go and feed in and collect and maintain, there should be a governance to that in terms of what standards we use, how do we put, and it should be clean. And that is when the data would get more mature to run an AI model or algorithm on it. Now, my algorithm can read anything that is GRN, GREN as green, and I would go and feed in certain things, and then it is going to go and work. But point is that if something is green and I start writing it as RED, then my algorithm is going to fail, right? So that is the reason why I say that data needs to be more matured, clean, and collected properly. It should be more internationally accepted standards. And if there are multiple standards, that is still okay. Please build in algorithms to go and talk to these standards, between these standards. And then when your data is mature, you run as many models on it. And the more the models you run, obviously the machine will learn and uh, and preempt more and give you more accurate predictive analytics. So that's how it's going to work.
Just wanted to quickly add huge plus one to what Vijay said, that to be able to run good, successful models, data has to be there in place. Uh, but there are also few other innovations which are taking place which are in very nascent stages. So, for example, there are chatbots now in place which basically understand human language to be able to assist you make bid documents which are more standardized. So there are experiments in nascent stages, but these are very limited part of AI modeling. Majority of part comes, as Vijay was saying, once the data is in place, then we can have predictions, we can have risk analysis, pattern understanding, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing
So,
is,
uh,
I this gives me more idea at this point in time that, the more we use something like a NLP, a language processing, or something we use more in terms of reading a lot of contracts and text,
yeah.
and the more we use other things, we could go and run AI on all of that and collect that
Mm.
particular data, and that data can be modeled as against our structured data and then develop another artificial intelligence. Yes, that also could be possible.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Arora. Thanks, Mr. Chaudhary. So we'll go to the next question. Do we have any robust methodology for an ecosystem of generative AI that you could build to enhance efficiency and productivity in the digital technology and procurement space? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Kabir, would you like to take this or?
Uh, please go ahead. I'm not certain that I have a direct response to it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So, when we want to work with generative AI or go ahead and put some predictive analytics, obviously we would need to have three things, right? One, a good data. Two, which is interactive, which can be understood by others. I mean, a good data is something which is good. I would say it is good for me, but it cannot be understood by others. It is meaningless. And three is good algorithms and models that can sit over it and work for us. As long as we have these three things, we can go ahead and work on a generative AI. Now, in order to get these three things, I must be having a set of historic data, which I need to go and cleanse, put or do a data heuristics over it, and then go and cleanse it up. Two is that how this interacts with the external world. Does the external world understand this data in a similar way? Because in supply chain, we do not work in a silo or within an organization. Like within a bank, there could be a lot of banking data which is has to reside within the particular bank itself. But point is, even they are also kind of interacting more with customers nowadays. So I cannot really find an example where an organization can have data only for themselves. But yes, so in supply chain, we have to interact with our external world for suppliers and also to our customers. So that has to be a very interactive data quality which everyone can really understand and EDIs can work on it. And then we go ahead and build a generative AI over it, and it's going to really work. Like for example, Amazon Business now, they are trying to get into the procurement space. There's catalog management. There, the moment we are thinking that I need to buy a laptop, and I go and give this command to Alexa, then NLP converts that, takes it into Amazon Business, feeds in, and then it moves for approval, and it goes to someone else as a voice note saying, hey, you have got an approval to make for this person, and he approves it, and that material lands up. So that's a futuristic world, and that's going to be reality over the next 1 or 2 years. So such kind of things would come in place. But to do all of this, the data has to be more clean, clear, and interactive.
Uh, thank you, Vijay. I just wanted to add one more point. I think we are few steps behind on this. we have to create a first data ecosystem to create ecosystem for generative AI. So that is where the struggle for procurement data is right now. And so there are global data standards, which I, for example, mentioned, open contracting data standard, which are allowing people and encouraging them to create this data ecosystem. So once you have this data ecosystem, then of course there are third-party ecosystems that we can superimpose. And I would request you to maybe just check out open contracting data standards uh, countries. So all the countries have open data portal where all this data is available. So at least when data is there, a lot of cross collaboration can happen to explore possible methodologies. That's
Thank you, Mr. Arora. So thank you so much for this insightful presentation, this session. This is a lot of information. Thank you for that. Thanks once again, Mr. Chaudhary and Mr. Arora. Now we'll
Thank
break
you.
for lunch. Thank you. Yeah. Now we'll break for lunch and reconvene at 2:15 p.m. and request all of you to be back on time so that we can start the next session on time at 2:15. And you could also check out our virtual event platform. Thank you so much. Thanks.
thank you. Thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for having us here. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.